Welcome everyone to today's video. We're the Dimitrov Boulay piano duo. My name is Dimitri Dimitrov.
And my name is Elvira Boulay.
And in today's video, we decided to talk to you about playing classical style pieces.
Generally, we distinguish different style periods. You have, for example, the Baroque, the classical style, the Romantic style. After that, you have the 20th century style, and so on. And all these different styles, we actually play in different ways. We emphasize different parts of the music that fits that style.
If you don't have enough knowledge and if you don't know exactly what to do, it will be, of course, very easy to play a classical style piece as a romantic piece. It can sound really romantic, and we're just going to point out a little now later in the video, we're going to point out a few things that are going to help you distinguish really well what's a classical style sound and what is more a romantic style sound. The first and the most important thing you can think about when you're playing a classical style and to remember to think about is articulation. That's the thing that comes up always at the top of my priorities when I'm teaching our piano students. Because what's articulation? Articulation is the way you breathe, the way you talk, the way you emphasize sentences when you play, when you take a breath, when you take a little pause, and then you continue with your sentence. The same is with piano pieces. You don't play a piano piece from the beginning until the end without any variance, without anything happening in between, and so that's articulation.
And in more practical terms, articulation is how you play something, whether you're playing it legato, staccato. You have other articulations like portato and tenuto. You have a lot of different ways how to play something, as well as what Dimitar mentioned, breathing in between, etc. That's all part of articulation. Now, in order to illustrate better what is articulation precisely, why don't we just dive in and Dimitar will show you.
Okay, so I'm going to try and keep this as simple as possible. The first thing, one of the most important things you need to remember when you're studying and when you're practicing classical style pieces is to practice them, especially in the beginning, without any pedal. Later on, you can add some pedal, you can talk to your teacher about it, how to do that, but I would recommend that you really practice without any pedal, so you can really study well what the articulation is in the piece. And so, for example, if you look at this piece, instead of starting like this, and then later, I would really not recommend this because you are not going to pay attention at all to the articulation. Now, if you remove the pedal, it's a whole different world. You start thinking about what does the articulation mean. And now that we remove the pedal, we come to two very practical tips, actually two very important rules that you need to remember. Look at the slur above the two notes of the right hand, as well as the slur above the two notes, the first two notes of each bar of the left hand in the first system. What does that mean? You might think that this slur above the two notes is legato, which in general terms that's true. It is legato, but in classical style, it means something else as well. It means that the second note, where the slur ends, is actually shorter and softer, like this. And that we call articulation, because if you do the pedal, or even without pedal, you can do this. You try to make everything legato, and that means that you're not articulating what's written in the score. In the left hand, very simply, it's absolutely the same. So yes, we're playing legato between the two notes, but the second note is going to be shorter and softer. If you look at the bar before the last, it's actually a very interesting example. You have this. Now, if you don't know what articulation is, and if you don't know what these little slurs mean above each two notes, you're going to play like this. And while that's still beautiful, it's not what's written in the score. In the classical style music, it will be very common to hear something like this. It's a very different character than that's already a little bit more romanticized way of playing it, then it's much more quirky, it's much more with much more character. And so that will be one of the rules that I want you to remember. The second rule is, if you look at the third system, the first 2 bars, you're going to have a legato over 2 bars. Of course, that means that you have to play all the notes legato, but again, remember, we're going to apply the first rule here a little bit, in the sense that the last note, where the legato ends, the last note is going to be shorter and softer as well, like this. Instead of. We don't connect bar 2 and bar 3. So when the legato ends, your last note is going to be shorter and softer. So every time you see this kind of legato markings above 2 notes or a little motive like 2 bars, remember that most likely, most of the time, your last note is going to be shorter and softer, and that's going to make the piece sound much more classical. Now, not to make this video too long, later on we'll record more and more videos on the same topics. By the way, don't forget to like and subscribe already if you haven't done so, because you'll help us enormously. Let's move on to Elvira's tips about what makes a classical style sound classical.
Now, another very important thing that makes a classical style classical is the use of pedal. Now, the use of pedal, I always approach it like this. In a romantic style, which is, a style that is very commonly played by students and very loved by students. You can think about composers like Chopin and Liszt. But when you play a romantic style, you would think always about pedal, that you put the pedal standard, and that you are thinking about where to change the pedal. Now, I think that you should have a totally different approach with the classical style. Instead of approaching it like we're putting the pedal and where should we change the pedal, we're actually going to approach it we're not going to put any pedal at all, and we're going to look where do we want to add a little bit of pedal. So standard, no pedal, and we're going to see where we're going to add. And that can be in, for example, long notes. That can be in places where where you want a little bit of resonance, where otherwise the notes will sound a little bit too bare. You can add some pedal there. Now let's take as an example this sonata in C major by Mozart. And I'm going to demonstrate to you what would be a romantic pedal, which I would apply in a romantic piece. And after that, I'll show you what's proper classical pedal. Now, as I said, the romantic type of pedaling, we're going to put pedal and we're going to decide where to change. And that's what I'm going to show you. The piece will sound like this with a romantic pedal. That sounds not at all how the Mozart sonata is supposed to sound. It doesn't sound classical at all. You can also not hear any of the articulations that you worked so hard to do. Now I'm going to show you what pedal I would put and what a big difference that makes in sound. I'm going to add pedal to just the long notes and to just a few notes that I want some resonance in. Now what I did here is I put just a pedal of a quarter note, so a quarter length. I put it on the first of every bar. Now remember, for the romantic pedal, what I just showed you, you hear how unclear this bass becomes, this Alberti bass. By the way, if you haven't checked out my video on the Alberti bass, check it out here. I'll put it in the link above here for you. And for example, the 16th, if we look one bar further, the 16th note, the run, in a classical style pedal, I would only put a little bit of pedal on the first 8 note to give it a little bit of a jump, a little bit of a lift. Whereas if it was a romantic piece, I would probably like to emphasize the drama and put pedal everywhere but change, which sounds rather ridiculous in this. So that doesn't sound classical at all. So I think the second thing to remember when you've worked very hard on the articulation, make sure you don't cover it with too much pedal, and make sure you don't approach it like you would a romantic piece. Don't approach it like you're putting pedals standard and seeing where to change. No, approach it without any pedal and see where you're missing some resonance, where you would like to give it a little bit more of a warm sound. Add some, and always mark it in the score. That would be my tip, especially for classical pieces where you're really adding pedal. Just mark it in the score. And as you've probably heard from my examples, we also usually don't add very long pedals in classical music, whereas in romantic music we add actually very long pedals. And that has to do with, if you remembered what Dimitar was talking about the motives. In romantic music they're uninterrupted, and with the classical style actually you breathe in between them. That has to do just with shorter phrases, and of course then you also get shorter pedals. Everything is more about lightness and energy. So I think that were our tips for how to play in a classical style, so how to make your classical piece sound really classical. And perhaps in the future we'll do some more on how to make a piece sound really romantic, or how to make a Baroque piece sound in the proper style of Baroque.
Don't forget to like our videos, that helps us enormously. Of course, if you're not subscribed yet, do that as well. Subscribe to our channel. You can follow us as well on Instagram and TikTok. We're also on Facebook. Whatever platform you're using, you can follow us there. Thank you so much for watching this video. For us, recording it was a great pleasure, and see you next time.